this is Nancy Newell. We're going to talk really quickly about PHP variables and scope. First of all, a variable is just a container that programs use to store information. Variables distinguish programming languages like PHP from markup languages like HTML. Now, to create a variable, it has to begin with a $sign, followed then by a letter, capital or lowercase, or an underscore. The variable name can also contain numbers, along with the letters and underscores, but no other special characters at all. And be careful because they are case sensitive. So here we have an example of a valid name. This one is invalid because it begins with an integer. This one is valid because it has the underscore right after the $sign. And this one is invalid because it has a hyphen or a dash, not an underscore, which is one of those special characters, so it's not allowed. Now, when you name variables, you want to make sure you have a very meaningful name. So, for instance, if my variable is going to contain customer first names, shall I name it X? It's not very meaningful. Or I can name it first name using camel case, which is the first letter of each word is capitalized after the first word. Now, whatever you name them, you want to be consistent. So since we went with first name, camel case, I would probably name it last name, camel case, for the customer's last name. But I could name it last underscore name or underscore last name or any variation you can think of. But if you start throwing it out there with different conventions, then it's going to be hard for you to keep track of your variable names. You cannot use this as a variable name. And there are some language constructs that are reserved or keywords. You can't use them for functions or constants or classes or anything like that, but you could technically use them for variable names, but doing so would be very confusing. So feel free to pause and go over the list. Now, when you assign variable names, it uses equals. So first name equals a value, PHP is a loosely typed language, so that means that it doesn't have any intrinsic types. It will automatically infer the data type of the variable based on the value. If you declare num1 equals 5, it's going to assume it's an integer. If you say quotation 1, it'll assume it's a string. 1.0, it's a double. If you call it true, it's a Boolean. You get the drift. It's going to assume based on what you tell it. Now, when you assign variables, you could also assign them to the value of another variable. For instance, here num2 equals num1, so now num2 is 5. And so you could say sum equals num1 plus num2, well, that would equal 10. Now, interestingly, if we create a string that uses double quotes and has variables within it, then when you print it, it's actually going to reference the value of those variables in the double quotes. I think that's very cool. But if you use single quotes, it's going to turn it into a string literal. So when you print it, it'll say num1 plus num2 equals sum. I thought that was very interesting. Now you can also assign variables by reference. What we did just a moment ago, like right here, num1 is 5, num2 is num1. If we then change num1 to 0 and print num2, num2 is still 5 because that's what it was at the time of assignment. But if you assign by reference, and you do that using the ampersand shown here, num2 now references the value of num1. So now if we change num1, because they're referencing the same value or the same object that is the value, when you print num2, it changed as well because they're referencing the same location of storage location. So now if you change num2 to 5 and print num1, it will also be 5. Now static variables, normal variables are deleted after your functions execute. All of that storage space is released. But static variables maintain that storage space after you're done with them. So then you can use your function over and over again, and it'll build on what already happened. So for instance, we have num1 plus equals 5. Well, the first time, num1 default value is 0, so when it plus equals 5, it's now 5. But next time you use it could be 10. And then 15 and 20. But if you don't make that a static variable, it'll be 5 every time because it's going to start out as the default 0. Static variables use local scope only. We'll talk about that. Scope is the range or the boundary where the program can access it or the program can see it. So if you try to access a variable outside of its scope, it's not going to be able to find it. The program won't be able to access it at all, and it'll give you an error. So to better explain this, there is global scope. These are variables that are declared outside of functions, and they're visible everywhere. And to use it outside of a function, you simply call upon the variable as normal. But if you want to use it inside a function, you either do global variable name, or you can access it using the globals array. And here are a couple of examples of that. I apologize for the missing semicolon. Now there's also local scope. Static variables are only available in local scope because these are declared inside functions, and they are accessible only within that one function. It's not seen by anywhere else. Now, here are some sources. You're welcome to pause and review them, but I wanted to show you a working example here. This right here is my what PHP motors page, and here I have a global variable because it's outside of a function, and I gave it a value of a string. Now, scope includes any files that are required or included. So when I go to my head module, it is still part of that global scope. So I don't have to call it global because I'm already in the global scope. And I echo that variable, which is going to send back the title I want for this page, which is included here. So now when you look at my page, look, that title, which was the global variable, is now the title of my page. So I hope this was informative, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much.